All right, Shalom. I want to give all praises, honor, and glory unto Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Rekah Kodash. I want to give double honors unto the apostles, and that was a great millstone where I learned this truth from. And I want to say peace, mercy, and blessings unto all the hopeful elect. The name of the Heavenly Father is Yahweh, and that means he exists, or he is to be. The name of the Son is Yahweh Shai. That means he is the deliverer. We are the Hebrew Israelites. There's 12 tribes that consist of our nation. They we're being called Negro, Latino, Native American, Seminole, Indian, Latin, Hispanics. All right, but we're the Israelites. And there's 12 tribes that consist of our nation. All right, not just one. Now, the self-proclaimed white man, he's not white, actually, he's red. According to the Bible, he is Esau, Edom. And according to Bible prophecy, Esau is the end of the world, and Jacob is the beginning of it that followed. Right, and I found this video, and it's it's 14 minutes of edification. This is from the Wealth Historian, right? So we're just gonna play it, all right? Pretty much it's saying how Babylon the Great, which you might know as America, is the modern day Roman Empire, right?
You're surrounded by marble columns that touch. Imagine you are standing in the center of Rome in the year 400 AD. You're surrounded by marble columns that touch the sky. You see aqueducts carrying fresh water over horizons. You see the Colosseum, a stadium that holds 50,000 screaming fans. You're standing in the capital of the greatest empire the world has ever known. An empire that spans 3 continents. An empire that has lasted for 1,000 years. If you tapped a Roman citizen on the shoulder and told them that in just 76 years, this entire city would be empty ruins, and the empire would vanish from the face of the earth, they would have laughed in your face. They would call you crazy. Rome is eternal. Rome is invincible. The systems are too big to fail. Now, fast forward to today. Stand in Times Square in New York City. Look at the skyscrapers. Look at the stock tickers flashing record highs. Look at the military power that dominates every ocean on the globe. If I told you that by the year 2026, the foundations of this American empire would irrevocably crack, you would probably have the exact same reaction as that Roman citizen. You would say
that this was 11 days ago, all right? It's already 2026, all right? Today is Sunday, January 11th, right? So just about a week, almost 2 weeks into the new year, and shit is hitting the fan. You got nationwide protests in America over this shooting in Minneapolis of Renee Good. All right, ICE and the civilians. Then all over there in Minneapolis, Minnesota. All right, you have the National Guard that are going against ICE. Okay, so that's the extreme division. All right, and we know the Lord said in Matthew that if a house be divided against itself, it shall not stand. Right?
America is too big to fail. But history is not a set of random events. It is a blueprint. It is a repeating cycle of rise and fall, driven by unchanging human nature.
Exactly. So let's go to the first scripture I want to bring out. Excuse me. This is from the book of Ecclesiastes, chapter 1 and verse 9. The thing that had been, it is that which shall be. Right? And that's why this is also modern day Egypt, Sodom and Gomorrah. It's all these, it carries the spirit of all these ancient kingdoms, but especially Rome, Egypt, and Sodom. Right? That which shall be, and that which is done. All right? Let me read that over again. The thing that has been, it is that which shall be, and that which is done is that which shall be done. And there's no new thing under the sun. So, right, Babylon the Great, this place is completely shadowing, the image of Rome, right? Keyword image, right?
Driven by unchanging human nature. We are not special. We are just the latest actors in a very old play. And right now, we are in the final act. The scariest thing about the fall of Rome isn't that...
Yeah, and that's spiritual, right? We're in the final act. Esau is the end of the world. I may bring this out a couple times, right, in this lesson. This is the book of 2nd Esdras chapter 6 and verse 7. Then answered I and said, what shall be the parting asunder of times? Or when shall be the end of the first, and the beginning of it that followeth? 8. And he said unto me, from Abraham unto Isaac, when Jacob and Esau were born of him, Jacob's hand held first the heel of Esau. For Esau is the end of the world, and Jacob is the beginning of it that followeth. All right, so this man is the end. Okay, and to connect Rome with Edom, you have this book here, which historians already notice. We notice through the spirit, the Roman Empire of the Edomite by William Beeston. So they know who they are. All right.
The scariest thing about the fall of Rome isn't that it happened. It's how eerily similar it looks to our current reality. The parallels are not vague.
The Fed decides. You choose before they do. Yes or no on Cal Sheet. Trade responsibly.
Excuse me. All these ads
Are not vague. They are mathematical, they are cultural, and they are undeniable. Rome didn't fall overnight. It succumbed to a slow-acting poison, a specific economic mistake that ate away at its soul until it was too weak to stand. Today, America has ingested that exact same poison. We are showing the exact same symptoms. And according to the historical timeline of empire life cycles, we are fast approaching our own expiration date. The year 2026 is not an arbitrary number. It marks the 250th anniversary of the United States.
Exactly. And what's happening? What's happening in Babylon? Okay, what's happening? Let's go to Infowars, man. And just see what's going on. Infowars, treason alert. Democrat mayors are now falsely claiming that ICE is committing crimes. Minneapolis Mayor Jacob Frey is now telling his crazed followers to take up arms against federal agents who are simply carrying out their court-ordered duties. All right, so that's division on all levels. Okay, federal, political, state versus state. All right, red, blue. All right, look at this. Trump says the U.S. could control 55% of the world's oil. Right, and we know that's why they went into Venezuela. Okay, now you also have Trump going after Greenland. Check this out. History just happened. All right. A cruel lord has effectively pulled the U.S. out of the United Nations, says the top NWO expert, William F. Jasper. All right. This is from CNN. All right. U.S. will take Greenland the hard way if it can't do it the easy way, Trump says. Okay, just like they took what? Venezuela. All right, let's go.
It marks the 250th anniversary of the United States.
Right, so inside this year, there are already mass nationwide protests. Okay, uproars of the people. This is from CNN 8 hours ago, January 10th. Nationwide protest after ICE agents' killing of Minneapolis woman. And that's what? Uproars of the people. Wars, rumors of wars, division. Okay, all of these are signs of the end.
And 250 years is the historical average lifespan for a global superpower before it undergoes a catastrophic reset. In this video, we are not just going to look at dusty history books. We are going to hold a mirror up to our own civilization. We are going to identify the singular, fatal mistake that destroyed Rome and prove to you that America is not only repeating it, but doing it faster and on a much larger scale. To understand the end, we have to understand the beginning. Rome wasn't always corrupt. In its early days, during the Roman Republic, it was a society built on what historians call Stoic virtues. It was built by hard men, farmers who became soldiers to defend their land and then returned to farming. There was a deep sense of duty, frugality, and shared destiny. Economically, this was reflected in their money. For centuries, the Roman currency was the silver denarius. It was a coin made of almost pure silver. It was sound money. If you held a denarius, you held actual intrinsic value. You didn't have to trust the government, you only had to trust the metal in your hand. This sound money created a stable foundation. It encouraged savings. It allowed for long-term planning. It funded the roads, the aqueducts, and the mighty legions that conquered the known world. Because the money was real, the economy was real. But success is a dangerous drug. As Rome conquered more territory, immense wealth flooded into the capital. The ruling class stopped being warrior farmers and became wealthy aristocrats.
Yep, that's that quote. Hard times. How's it go? Hard times make strong men. Okay, here it goes. AI overview. You know, which this shit is taking over everything. The saying hard times make strong men create good times create weak men, and weak men create hard times. That's what happened. That's what happened back then. That's what's happening now.
The ruling class stopped being warrior farmers and became wealthy aristocrats. The focus shifted from production to consumption. By the time the Republic
That's what
died,
Babylon is all about. Consumption. Consume, obey. All right?
and the Roman Empire began under Augustus Caesar, the seeds of decay were already planted. The empire was vast, stretching from England to Egypt. Maintaining this expanse was incredibly expensive. You had to pay hundreds of thousands of soldiers stationed thousands of miles away. You had to build and repair infrastructure across continents, and most importantly, you had to keep the population of Rome happy. This is where the concept of bread and circuses originated. To keep the massive unemployed population of the city from rioting, the emperors provided free grain and massive gladiatorial games. It was the ancient version of welfare and endless entertainment distraction. All of this costed...
Which is called what? Bread and circus. All right, let's go back. What is bread and circuses? From Latin panem et cirque, instances, refers to a strategy where governments pacify the masses with superficial distractions like free food and lavish entertainment, games, spectacles to keep them content, docile, and distracted from serious political issues or grievances, thus preventing unrest. Okay? Coined by Roman satirist Juvenal, it critiques the Roman populace trading their civic freedom for easy comforts. That's exactly what's happening in Babylon. Okay? It's January 11th, right? Not even a month from now, there'll be what? Super Bowl. Super Bowl is on what? Sunday, February 8th, 2026. That's the, that's the highest bread and circus day of the year, right? And this year, Super Bowl 60 will take place on Sunday, February 8th, 2026 at Levi Stadium in Santa Clara, California. Okay? So, hey, that's a distraction. Sports, Puff Daddy, with 50 Cent, and what these celebrities are doing. Okay? Movies, films, which all they're making now is a remake. It's all bullshit. But this is your modern day bread and circus, right? These are your modern day gladiators, right?
It was the ancient version of welfare and endless entertainment distraction. All of this cost enormous amounts of money. The gold and silver looted from conquered nations began to dry up. The expenses of the empire started to outweigh its income.
Viagra and Cialis, they increase blood flow down there. That's why you can physically perform, but they do nothing for...
Silver looted from conquered nations began to dry up. The expenses of the empire started to outweigh its income. Rome had a budget deficit. Now, an emperor has two choices when faced with a deficit. Choice one is the hard choice. You can cut spending, which makes the citizens angry, or you can raise taxes, which makes the rich, powerful people angry. No emperor wanted to do that. They wanted to be loved. They wanted to be gloried. So they chose the easy path. They chose the fatal mistake. They decided to mess with the money. This is the mechanism of collapse. Pay close attention, because this is exactly where we are today. It started slowly. Around the year 64 AD, Emperor Nero faced a financial crisis. He needed more money to pay his debts and fund his lavish lifestyle.
Right, and notice this happened under Nero, financial crisis. Okay, which our apostles know the great millstone has, teach that Mr. Trump, he's Nero and coming back, you know, which I believe to be true. And you also have other people that's saying that this guy is Nero as well, right? All right, this is from Birdie Shade, right? Because reincarnation is you know, reincarnation is in the Bible, right? Break down that word, re meaning back, incarnate meaning in the flesh, right? State of being embodied anew, all right? For re meaning back, incarnation meaning a new embodiment, okay? Meaning what? The spirit is back in the body, okay? So it makes sense that uh, Trump, you know, Nero came back as Trump. This is from Birdie Shit. AI found 31 shocking parallels between Trump and Nero. Here they are. Dive into AI's 31-point comparison of Trump and Nero, exposing unsettling similarities in how both men use power, attack critics, and undermine institutions. Right? It says Emperor Nero is known as the mad, bad emperor. Although there has been efforts to balance this out. All right? Nero was a narcissist, cruel despot, the cruel lord. When asked, please list similarities between Trump and Nero, AI came with 31 parallels. Cult of personality. Both Trump and Nero cultivated personal loyalty over institutional loyalty, surrounding themselves with admirers and dismissing critics. 2. Focus on spectacle. Nero was known for lavish public performances and spectacles. Trump has been similarly focused on large rallies, media appearances, and dramatic political events. And I believe, let me see. All right. This is from October 6, 2025. All right. The cruel lord says White House UFC event will be held on June 14th. The UFC's much anticipated live event at the White House will take place on June 14th, according to President Trump. Last Trump revealed the date, which coincides with his 80th birthday, during an address Sunday in Norfolk, VA. On June 14th next year, which will be this year, 2026, we're going to have a big UFC fight at the White House, right at the White House grounds, Trump said. The UFC has not yet announced or confirmed a date for the event, which is expected to take place on the South Lawn and is being planned in anticipation of the 250th anniversary of American independence, which that's the year we are in now, right? UFC CEO Dana White has previously revealed that the event will include official weigh-ins at the Lincoln Memorial, and that merely replacing the grass on the White House lawn afterward would cost $700,000. White has also said fighters will walk to the octagon from the Oval Office. So yeah, this got to be Nero, right? This guy has to be Nero. Focus on spectacle, all right? What other president you know has had a UFC fight at the White House, right? Nero was known for lavish public performances and spectacles. Trump has been similarly focused on large rallies, media appearances, and dramatic political events. While Rome burns, right? Meanwhile, if inflation is out of control, people can't afford their rent, people are homeless, all right? People can't afford their health insurance, you know? 3, indifference to crisis. Nero allegedly fiddled while Rome burned, showing indifference during a crisis. Trump was accused of downplaying major crises such as the 2020 and political unrest. Populist appeals. Both appealed to popular classes for support while antagonizing the elite. Nero gave the Roman populace games. There you go. Trump appealed to working class frustrations. Use of scapegoating. Nero blamed Christians for the Great Fire of Rome. Trump have often blamed immigrants, the media, or political opponents for societal problems. Authoritarian tendencies. Both demonstrated authoritarian impulses. Nero declared himself above the Senate, and Trump has been accused of undermining democratic institutions. Oh, he's doing that now. Okay, with ICE. Disdain for critics. Both leaders were known for aggressively attacking anyone who criticized them. Nero through executions, Trump through public shaming and insults. Right?
And fund his lavish lifestyle, he came up with a devious idea. He gathered up the silver denarius coins, melted them down, and mixed in a small amount of cheap base metals like copper. He then reminted the coins.
So this is what devaluation of currency. So that started with Nero. Right?
Suddenly, Nero had more coins to spend. The new denarius looked the same as the old one on the surface. It had the emperor's face on it. It was officially declared to be worth the same amount, but in reality, it had less silver. It had less intrinsic value. This was the ancient version of money printing. Nero had just debased the currency. At first, nobody noticed. The party continued. But subsequent emperors saw how easy this was. If they needed to fund a war, they just added more copper to the silver mix. If they needed to build a new palace, they just debased the currency a little more. Over the next 200 years, this process accelerated. By the time of Emperor Marcus Aurelius, around 170 AD, the denarius was only about 75% silver. 50 years later, it was down to 50% silver. By the year 270 AD, under Emperor Aurelian, the denarius had become a joke. It was barely
completely devaluated. Okay? And that's what's happening to the US dollar right now. It does not have the same purchasing power as it did yesterday. Okay? And let's not talk about over 30 years ago. You know?
5% silver. It was basically a bronze coin with a thin silver wash over it that rubbed off after a few uses.
Meaning what? It wasn't worth shit. Right?
The Roman government had effectively stolen the wealth of its people slowly over 2 centuries. But here is the thing about economics. You cannot cheat reality forever. The people of the empire eventually realized what was happening. Merchants, traders, and soldiers realized that the coins they were receiving were junk. They knew the government was lying to them about the value of the money. The result was catastrophic inflation. Because the money was worth less, merchants demanded more of it for the same goods.
That's called inflation. All right? That's coming back in a major way in this time. All right? Let me get the scripture queued. All right? Because right now, what we're experiencing is inflation, but that always turns into hyperinflation. That's the next step.
Because the money was worth less, merchants demanded more of it for the same goods. The price of wheat, oil, and clothing skyrocketed. We have records showing that in the 2nd century, a specific measure of wheat cost around 8 drachmas. By the 3rd century, that same measure of wheat cost 120,000 drachmas. Savings were wiped out. If you'd saved good silver coins your whole life, the government's new junk coins made your nest egg worthless. The middle class was evaporated. To combat this, emperors tried even more desperate measures. Emperor Diocletian issued the Edict on Maximum Prices in the year 301 AD. He basically made it illegal to raise prices under penalty of death. It failed miserably. Merchants simply stopped selling goods, or they moved their activities to the black market. Shortages spread across the empire. People were starving in the streets because the economic system had completely broken down. The soldiers on the frontiers, realizing they were being paid in worthless metal, began to mutiny. They abandoned their posts. They cared more about survival than defending a capital city that was robbing them. And this is the crucial point. The barbarians didn't break through Rome's walls because they were suddenly stronger. They broke through because Rome was weaker. The financial rot had destroyed the social contract. Why fight for an empire that pays you in fake money? Why produce goods for a system that punishes savers? When the money dies, trust dies. And when trust dies, the empire dies. The Visigoths sacked Rome in 410 AD, not with a bang, but with a whimper. They walked into a hollow shell of a once great civilization. Now, let us turn that mirror toward ourselves. Let us look at the United States of America. Just like Rome, America began with a currency backed by hard assets. The US dollar was, for a long time, a receipt for gold. It was a promise that the government could not simply print its way out of trouble. This discipline helped build the greatest industrial engine in human history. Just like Rome, America became the undisputed global superpower after a massive global conflict, World War II. We became the world's policemen. We established military bases in vast corners of the globe.
That's the whore that sitteth upon many waters. All right. That's the whore. This is let me see. I got a lot. This is Revelation 13:1. And I stood upon the sand of the sea. This is John the Revelator. And saw a beast rise up out of the sea, having 7 heads and 10 horns. And upon his horns 10 crowns. And upon his heads the name of blasphemy. So this is the beast that the whore rides upon. All right? So pretty much NATO and the EU. All right? It's NATO and EU allies. But now those allies, all right, are starting to resent the whore, getting tired of her, right? 2, and the beast which I saw was like a leopard, which ties back to who? Alexander the Great and the Greeks. And his feet were as the feet of a bear. So that means his end. His end going to come, the bear's going to take part of that, which the modern day, who bears the modern day symbol of the bear? It's the continent of Russia, the Russians, etc. Okay? And to prove that the feet represents the end, you would have to go back to Daniel, because it talks about the statue, the head of gold, the legs of iron, and then the toes and the feet, and then what happened? The stone, which is Yahushua, smites the statue at the feet, because that's the end, represents the end of Gentile nations ruling. And then the next kingdom that's going to be established is the everlasting kingdom of the Israelites under Yahushua. All right, King David, the 144,000, the 12, the governing body, etc., the elect. All right, and then ultimately all Israel will be saved through that, the first fruits, right? And his mouth as the mouth of a lion, which goes in, Britain, right? Which America came out of Britain. And the dragon gave him his power and his seat and great authority, which Rome. America is modeled after the image of Rome. And this video that this guy put up, the Welsh historian, the Roman Empire's final mistake, America is repeating it by 2026. Just back up, our apostles and elders, what we've been saying, what they've been saying. Excuse me. 3, and I saw one of his heads as it were wounded to death. All right. And his deadly wound was healed. It was healed during the time of the Renaissance. Came back as America. That's how it healed. And all the world wanted after the beast. Right? Yeah. All right. The name, the ones whose name was not written in the book. Right? 4, and they worshiped the dragon, which gave power unto the beast. And they worshiped the beast, saying, who's like unto the beast, who was able to make war with him, right? Because the Most High blessed Esau. Ultimately, Esau's blessing is his sword, his military might, his advanced weaponry, ICBMs, nukes, etc. Right? But now you have other nations that possess that weaponry, those weapons. 5, and there was given unto him a mouth speaking great things and blasphemies, and power was given unto him to continue 42 months. Yeah, that blasphemy that goes into his Catholicism, his religion, Christianity, his paintings. It says what? No marvel, Satan has transformed himself into an angel of light, right? In verse 6, and he opened his mouth and blasphemy against the Most High, to blaspheme his name and his tabernacle and them that dwell in heaven. And that's what he did, by saying that the Lord is the white man, angels are little white babies. The movies he make, putting himself up as God. 7, and it was given to him to make war with the saints and to overcome them. Yeah, all right, to put us in captivity. All right, that was part of it. All right, and that links with Revelation 11. And our dead bodies shall lie in the street of that great city. But it's in this great city that the Spirit of life is going to enter in back in the saints, and He's going to set us in order before His eyes, and they're going to start fearing. Right? That's what's going on. And to overcome them. And power was given Him over all kindreds and tongues and nations. Right? And all that dwell upon the earth shall worship Him, whose name was not written in the book of life of the Lamb slain from the foundation of the world. Right? But here's the judgment of Esau. They're not going to be saved. Right? They don't need to be saved from anything. Rev 13 and 9. If any man have an ear, let him hear. He that leadeth into captivity shall go into captivity. Right? He made war with us and put us into captivity. Right? So, Isaiah 14. They shall take them captives whose captives they were. He that leadeth with the sword must be killed with the sword. War. Right? And this man has been waging war since going back to the time of Cain. Here's the patience and the faith of the saints, right?
We became incredibly wealthy, shifting from a nation of hard-working producers to a nation of high-consuming debtors. And just like Rome, we reached a point where our ambitions outweighed our wallet. We wanted the guns and butter. We wanted massive military spending to maintain our global empire, and we wanted massive social welfare programs at home. Starting in the 1960s, the pressure began to mount. We were fighting the Vietnam War and launching the Great Society programs simultaneously. Gold was draining out of the U.S. Treasury as foreign nations demanded payment. So, in 1971, President Richard Nixon did exactly what Emperor Nero did. He closed the gold window. He declared that the U.S. dollar was no longer convertible into gold. In that instant, the U.S. dollar stopped being a receipt for reality and started being a...
And notice he said 1970, because that's around the same time that, NASA, okay, 1958. NASA was created on October 1st, 1958, okay, as a civilian agency to lead Babylon's space efforts formed from the National Advisory Committee, right? February 20th, 1962, John H. Glenn Jr. was the first American to orbit the Earth, right? Let's see. Okay. In 1970, NASA navigated the end of the Apollo era with the dramatic, near disastrous, but ultimately successful Apollo 13 mission, which saw its crew return safely after an in-flight explosion. The agency also began shifting focus to robotic exploration, launching precursors to the Pioneer and Voyager missions and developing the ATS satellites for weather communications, right? So that's when he began to set his nest among the stars. And now, under Trump, right before the 2020, they created the Space Force. The U.S. Space Force was officially established on December 20th, 2019, when President Donald Trump, that's the last time he was in office, signed the National Defense Authorization Act into law, making it the first new branch of the U.S. Armed Forces in 73 years, tasked with protecting U.S. interests in space and providing space capabilities. Right?
In that instant, the US dollar stopped being a receipt for reality and started being a fiat currency. Its value was now based entirely on faith in the United States government. We switched from the silver denarius to the copper coin. Since 1971, the debasement of the US dollar has been relentless. But unlike Rome, which was limited by how fast they could physically melt down and remint metal coins, we have no physical limitations. We can create trillions of dollars with a few keystrokes on a computer at the Federal Reserve. This allows us to speed run the collapse. What took Rome 200 years, we are achieving in 50. Look at the national debt. It took the United States over 200 years to accumulate its first $1 trillion in debt.
That's spiritual too. He said, what took Rome 200 years, we're achieving in 50. Because the Lord says he's going to speed up, shorten the days for his elect's sake. All right? Make the time short. All right? And ultimately, they want to, Esau, they want to speed this thing up so they could come in with a new form of buying and selling, which is going to be the MOTB, which is actually a physical mark, a rice device. All right? The chip.
Today, we add a new $1 trillion to the debt every few months. We're now over $34 trillion in debt. This number is so large the human brain cannot comprehend it. How are we paying our bills? We are printing the money. The Federal Reserve creates new dollars out of thin air to buy the government's debt. This is
So your dollar's not worth nothing. All right? There's no new thing under the sun. This will lead to hyperinflation. This is Revelation chapter 6 and verse 6. And I heard a voice in the midst of the four beasts say, a measure of wheat for a penny. Now, it's not talking about a penny. Like, you just walk past in the street, hey, you might pick it up. Because now they don't make pennies no more. They stopped that in 2025. All right? But 9 times out of 10, you walk past a penny, you're not going to pick it up. You walk past a $10 bill, $20 bill, you might pick the shit up. But it's not talking about that penny. Right? It says, and 3 measures of barley for a penny, and see not thou hurt, not the oil and the wine. This is where studying is, it's very important. If you look up the word penny here, the word there is denarion.
Strong's G 1220. Denarion. Denarion.
Which means containing 10. Which is a Roman silver coin in the New Testament time. It took its name from being equal to 10 asses. And asses are actually, I believe they're 10 bronze or copper Roman coins. All right? So you have to have 10 of bronze, copper Roman coins to equal 1 silver denarii. Right? A number after 217 BC increased to 16. Right? It was the principal silver coin of the Roman Empire from the parable of the laborers in the vineyards. It would seem that a denarius was then the ordinary pay for a day's wages. Right?
This is exactly the same mechanism as adding base metal to the silver coin.
Right, but let's go back. Go back to the prophecy. Because what is it saying? It's saying, and I heard a voice in the midst of the four beasts say, a measure of wheat for a penny. Let's see what that says. GNT. It's Rev 6 and verse 6. I've heard what sounded like a voice coming from among the 4 living creatures, which said, a quart of wheat for a day's wages. Right? And quart is not really a lot. It's probably just enough for 1 man. And 3 quarts of barley for a day's wages. Not really enough for an entire family. But do not damage the olive trees and your vineyards, which represents the truth. Because this word got to go out and tell the elect to still. Right?
This is exactly the same mechanism as adding base metal to the silver coin. Every new dollar that is printed dilutes the purchasing power of every dollar you worked hard to save. We are already seeing the cracks form. We are already seeing the inflation. You feel it every time you go to the grocery store. You feel it when you look at housing prices that have become completely disconnected from reality. The government will try to tell you inflation is low, just like Roman emperors claimed their copper coins were silver.
Inflation is not low. It's going to lead to hyperinflation. Right? Hyperinflation is an extremely rapid and out of control increase in prices, typically defined as inflation exceeding 50% per month, which drastically erodes the value of a currency, making it nearly worthless and causing severe economic chaos, often triggered by governments printing excessive money to cover spending. Right? That started with Nero in the ancient world. All right? And Lord willing is going to end with Nero in the modern day Rome. Right?
just like Roman emperors claimed their copper coins were silver. But your bank account knows the truth. We are seeing the breakdown of the social contract. Just like late-stage Rome, America is facing intense internal division. The gap
Yeah,
between...
the scripture said, house divided shall not stand, right? It's from the book of Matthew chapter 12. This is Matthew 12 and verse 25. And Yahushua knew their thoughts and said unto them, every kingdom divided against itself is brought to desolation. I mean, ultimately, it's destroyed. All right? And every city or house divided against itself shall not stand. And if Satan cast out Satan, he is divided against himself. How then shall his kingdom stand? So it's inevitable, right?
The gap between the super rich who benefit from the money printing and the working class is wider than at any point since the Gilded Age. We are seeing the rise of bread and circuses. We are distracted by endless entertainment cycles, social media dopamine loops, and
Call it doom scrolling. Twitter, X, formerly known as Twitter, TikTok, Facebook, Instagram. Men shall be lovers of themselves, chasing that dopamine hit, selfies.
celebrity gossip, while the foundations of our economic house are termites eating away the wood. We have a population heavily dependent on government assistance, creating a political feedback loop that makes cutting spending political suicide. And now we look at the timeline. Sir John Glubb, a British historian, analyzed the life cycles of great empires over 3,000 years. He found a startling pattern. The Assyrians, the Persians, the Greeks, the Roman Republic, the Ottoman Empire, the British Empire, they all lasted for an average of about 250 years. They go through the same
So
stage.
Esau, his time is short, man. And he knows his time is short, which is why he's getting ready to come down. Time of Jacob's trouble, right? It's Revelation chapter 12 and verse 12. Therefore rejoice, ye heavens, and ye that dwell in them. Woe to the inhabitants of the earth and of the sea, for the devil, which is a man, it's not talking about the spiritual demon, all right? Actually, Satan, it's talking about the man Esau. He's the deceiver, it's talking about. Is come down unto you, having great wrath, because he knoweth that he had but a short time, right?
The British Empire, they all lasted for an average of about 250 years. They go through the same stages. The age of pioneers, the age of conquests, the age of commerce, the age of affluence, the age of intellect, and finally, the age of decadence and decline. The age of decadence is marked by debt, an influx of foreigners, a welfare state, and a weakening of the shared values that built the empire. Does that sound familiar? The United States declared independence in 1776. If you add 250 years to that date, you land.
Which that is on the back of your dollar bill in Roman numerals. So it's novus ordo seclorum. A lot of Latin is written. A lot of the laws here, medical things of that nature, is in Latin and Greek. Why? Because this is the modern day Roman Empire. The infrastructure is modeled after Rome. All right, it's all modeled after Rome. That's what it means when it says made in an image of the beast, right?
Squarely on the year 2026. We are mathematically at the end of the historical average lifespan of a superpower. We have checked every single box on the list of empire collapse symptomatology. We have the massive debt, we have the currency debasement, we have the military overextension, we have the internal social division. The Roman Empire's final mistake was believing that the laws of economics didn't apply to them because they were Rome. They thought they could cheat the system by diminishing their currency, and that the rest of the world would just accept it forever.
Yeah, this is the rejoicing city that dwelt carelessly. All right. This is Zephaniah chapter 2 and verse 15. This is the rejoicing city that dwelt carelessly, that said in the heart, I am, and there's none beside me. How is she become a desolation, a place for beasts to lie down in? Everyone that passeth by her shall hiss and wag its head, right?
They thought they could cheat the system by diminishing their currency, and that the rest of the world would just accept it forever. America's final mistake is exactly the same. We believe that because the US dollar is the world reserve currency, we can print infinite amounts of it without consequence. We believe that we can borrow more money than has
That's
ever
why you have BRICS nations. And other nations are joining up to be BRIC nations, which nations are, you have these nations that are ditching the dollar. Because there's a saying, when America sneezes, the world catches a cold. Pretty much the whole world is affected by the financial, you know, struggles of America, right?
existed in human history and never
Because what they almost all of them are forced to deal with the dollar for oil. That's why they're making deals amongst themselves. That's why Esau is so after the oil, right?
have to pay it back in real terms. But the rest of the world is waking up, just like the merchants in ancient Rome began to refuse the debased denarius. We see nations around the world, from China to Russia to Saudi Arabia, actively taking steps to move away from the US dollar in global trade.
BRICS nations, right? BRICS nations. BRICS is an intergovernmental organization comprising 11 major emerging countries: Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, Saudi Arabia, Egypt, Ethiopia, the United Arab Emirates, Indonesia, and Iran. The group, originally an acronym for the founding members' economies, has expanded to foster political, economic, and social cooperation among its members, particularly those from the global south, right? So yeah, these nations, they are starting to wake up and move away from the dollar.
Actively taking steps to move away from the US dollar in global trade. These are the modern barbarians at the gate. They are not attacking with swords, they are attacking by simply rejecting our debt. If the world stops accepting dollars for real goods like oil and manufactured products, all those trillions of printed dollars will flood back into the domestic US economy. The result will not just be the inflation we see today, it will be hyperinflation that wipes out.
Exactly. It will be hyperinflation. All right. And you can read about that in Revelation 6, right? Where it's going to cost you a day's pay, which nowadays, you might make anywhere between $125 to $200. Maybe if you're lucky, maybe more, if you're extremely lucky. But imagine you taking all that money just to get some bread, or a box of, um, you know, uh, pasta noodles, or some milk and some eggs. Just a few items.
The middle class overnight. The year 2026 is not a doomsday prediction where the world ends on a Tuesday. It is a historical marker. It is the point where the mathematical weight of our debt and debasement becomes unsustainable. It is the point where the interest payments on our national debt become larger than our entire defense budget. It is the point of no return. When Rome fell, it wasn't the end of the world. Humanity survived. Italy survived. But the structure of that society, the comfort, the security, and the global dominance vanished into the Dark Ages. Those who were dependent on the system were crushed when the system failed. Those who survived and even thrived during the collapse of Rome were the ones who saw it coming. They were the ones who held real assets: land, gold, silver, productive skills, instead of relying on the debased currency of a dying state. The warning signs are flashing red. History is screaming at us across the centuries. The mistake has already been made. The poison is already in the system. The only question now is how long the patient has left and what you're going to do to prepare for the inevitable reset. We cannot stop the cycle of empire. It is bigger.
Well, what they're going to do is they're going to introduce the mark of the beast. All right? That's what they're going to do to try to keep power. Because there's no way they could, they know they can't save the dollar. All right? They're actually doing things to speed up the collapse. This is Book of James 5:1. Go to now, ye rich men, weep and howl for your miseries that shall come upon you. Your riches are corrupted. Yeah, back then, the denarii became corrupted because they start to mint it with weaker metals, right? Nowadays, your dollar's corrupted. It's not worth anything. It's not backed by gold or silver, right? And other nations are rejecting it. Okay, and your garments are moth-eaten. Your gold and your silver is cankered, and the rest of them shall be a witness against you, and shall eat your flesh as it were fire. Ye have heaped together treasure for the last days. All right, and all that treasure that you have heaped together, what it says in Job, This is Job 20 and 15. He has swallowed down riches, and he shall vomit them up again. The Most High shall cast them out of his belly. All that riches he got, he gonna vomit it up. All right, and the saints are gonna get it back. All right. This is back in James 5 and 4. Behold, the hire of the laborers who have reaped down your fields, which is of you kept back by fraud, cried, and the cries of them which have reaped are entered into the ears of the Lord of Sabaoth. Right? Meaning the Lord of armies. Right?
We cannot stop the cycle of empire. It is bigger than any of us. It is bigger than any politician.
And I'm sorry, read that again. James 5 and 4. Behold, the hire of the laborers who have reaped down your fields, which is kept back of you by fraud. And that's what Esau does. Heavy taxing the people, stealing, all these unrighteous decrees. He that earn their wages, earn them to put it in a bag with holes. And the cries of them which have reaped are entered into the ears of the Lord of Sabaoth. Meaning what? The Israelites. All right? Because when you go to Job, it says every hand of the wicked shall be upon him. That word goes into like the workers, the laborers. So yeah, people going, man, you don't have people, when people lose their 401k, things of that nature, you think people are hitting the streets now, people are going to be pissed off. So this is what's coming upwards of the people, right? It's the end of Esau's empire.
We cannot stop the cycle of empire. It is bigger than any of us. It is bigger than any politician. But we can learn from it. We can refuse to be like the Roman citizen standing in the Colosseum.
With that, I'll end it there. Like I said, it's a very good video. It's only 14 minutes. We'll read this in second address again. This is second address chapter 6 and verse 7. Then answered I and said, what shall be the parting asunder of times, or when shall be the end of the first, and at the beginning of it that follow it? And he said unto me, from Abraham unto Isaac, and when Jacob and Esau were born of him, Jacob's hand held first the heel of Esau. For Esau is the end of the world, and Jacob is the beginning of it that follow it. So with that, I want to give all praise, honor, and glory to Yahweh Hashem Yahushua. I pray this was edifying. Shalom to the hopeful elect.